There's a little bit of room on the other side here. You want to make some room, you can step over there if you like. Okay. There are days as governor when I'm not sure I have the words. But I know that there are women out there right now and right here in this room who are terrified, and rightly so. First, let me be clear. No matter what atrocious opinion the Supreme Court officially rolls out this summer in regards to Roe v. Wade, abortion is safe and legal in Illinois. That's because the women legislators standing here with me today had the courage and the foresight to lead the passage of laws protecting the right to choose. These women and the many men who are their allies saw what was happening in Texas and in Missouri and in Mississippi, and declared that Illinois would be a safe haven for reproductive rights. As long as I'm governor of Illinois, and as long as we have a pro-choice legislature, abortion will be legal in this state. A decision to overturn Roe v. Wade does not mean that abortions will stop happening. It just means that in half of the states where their governors and legislatures have declared war on reproductive rights, women will be forced into dangerous and sometimes deadly situations. And as with everything, the burden will fall disproportionately on the most marginalized women, those who are poor or black or brown. They will bear the highest cost of this decision. The implications of reversing Roe are terrifying. It goes far beyond ending the right to an abortion. It means an end to the constitutional right to privacy. It means women who've had a partial miscarriage may now be forced to carry that fetus to full term. It means they can take away the right to birth control and fertility treatments. It means women who lose access to the full suite of medical advances that give them choices in how and when they want to start a family are at risk. We were warned about today. We were warned over and over and over again. And yet some folks didn't want to believe it. So let me put you on alert again. If you think the Republican politicians who have engineered the court's reversal of Roe v. Wade are going to stop here, let me tell you otherwise. This is just the beginning. Next, they're coming for marriage equality. Then they will take away civil rights from marginalized and minority communities. If this ruling stands, if they can reverse 50 years of settled law, then every Supreme Court decision that this country freer and fairer can be reversed by this court. I'm so tired of the same old BS on the right. Don't angrily shout about freedom and then engineer it away from more than half of Americans. Stop pretending you're patriots when you're cheering the death of democracy. Don't take us, the exhausted majority, for granted anymore. We are done, and today we begin to show you how ready we are to fight back. Illinois is a beacon of hope in an increasingly dark world, because we will fight like hell, not just for the women of Illinois, but for every person in our state and every person across this nation who believes not in limiting civil rights and human rights, but in expanding them. That is freedom. That is democracy. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. And now I'd like to introduce the principal sponsor of the Reproductive Rights Act, the Reproductive Health Act here in the state of Illinois, Representative Kelly Cassidy. Representative.
spent a lot of time in the summer of 2019 saying what a difference a governor makes, and that remains true to this day. Thank you, Governor Pritzker, for your partnership. We were warned. We did know this day was coming. But it is important, and I'm glad Governor Pritzker started with this. This is a draft. Now, I don't think there's anyone at this podium with a great deal of optimism that it's going to change much. But it is a draft, and abortion remains legal in the U.S. right now, and it remains legal and will remain legal in Illinois for as long as we can hold that line. As someone whose mother had to cross state lines to give birth to me in the safest way possible that her doctor recommended but couldn't under New Jersey law, I've been on these front lines my whole life. We saw the warnings. Here in Illinois, we've done a lot of the work to build that force field, and I am so grateful to the people that we see here and so many others who helped us get that across the finish line. The important force field of House Bill 40 and the RHA and the repeal of the Parental Notice of Abortion Act to create that safe zone for reproductive health. As Governor Pritzker said, don't think for a minute that there was a drop of sincerity in any of the folks who were saying, we just want these rights to go back to the states, because they are already making clear they are coming for a national ban. And no law we pass here in Illinois will help us then. So we cannot rest on these rights. We have to stand firm and ensure that we are not in a position where not just half the states restrict access, but every state because of a national ban passing. And again, as the governor, it's not just about reproductive rights. Every single right that we have that is based on the right of privacy, the foundation of the Roe decision, is at risk. They've telegraphed that in the decision, naming decisions on birth control and interracial marriage and marriage equality. They've given us their roadmap. I feel like my life and my family's life is teetering at the top of a Jenga tower that we're watching crash in real time. My marriage, my children's relationship with their other mother, my right to bodily autonomy is all in the crosshairs. So our responsibility, and I challenge each and every one of you to get as creative as we can, is to think about what else our force field needs. What else do the women and pregnant people coming from other states that restrict abortion need when they come to us? We've got a bill sitting in the Senate to protect healthcare workers from adverse actions from other states. Are we going to look to ways to ensure that the parents in Alabama or Texas who want to access gender-affirming care for their trans kid know that they're welcome here, that we've got their backs, that we're going to protect the providers who are providing that care as well? The exhausted majority, indeed. I'm tired, but I'm not done, and I know nobody in this room is done, and I couldn't be more proud to stand with these amazing warriors for justice. Next, I'll bring up my colleague, Representative Sonia Harper.
Thank you, Representative Cassidy. Thank you, Governor Pritzker. Today, I am angry. I'm angry for the women who feared this very moment, who in 2020 turned out in record numbers to protect reproductive freedoms. I am angry for the single mom of 4 experiencing a high-risk pregnancy in Mississippi who cannot afford to travel out of state for safe care. I am angry for the 14-year-old assault survivor in Ohio who's being further stripped of control over her own life. I am angry at the men who've decided that their right to bodily autonomy is freedom, but my right to bodily autonomy is illegal. Illinois continues to show the nation what it looks like to empower women so we can be parents on our own time if and when we choose to do so. Together, we put over-the-counter birth control at our pharmacies. We put pads and tampons at all our community colleges and universities. We put privacy protections in place for our most vulnerable young people dealing with some of the hardest decisions of their lives. My colleagues and I are doing everything we can to expand health care. If Congress needs a lesson in how to do what is right, they can look right here at what we're doing in Illinois. Thank you, and next I'd like to introduce Leader Delia Ramirez.
Thank you, Representative Harper. As I look to the left and I look at that cloudiness and that rain that just keeps coming, that is symbolic to what is happening to all of us across America in this moment as we weep, as we're enraged by this moment. And I join my voice to that of the millions of people across our country mourning a dark day in our nation's history. The governor said it. We've warned that this day would come. And although it is not final, it is a reflection of what will happen in the next few weeks, in the next 2 months. The leaked draft Supreme Court decision is appalling, it's unacceptable, and is an attack on reproductive rights for all Americans. I mourn with the young people who may grow up in a country where our laws tell them that they have no autonomy over their bodies. I join the Black and Latino communities who are already disproportionately impacted by lack of access to health care, who will now be targeted, who will be criminalized by anti-choice laws that deny them the reproductive care they need. I think about our immigrant communities who are already living in the shadows, who are already experiencing the worst working conditions in the entire country, who have to quietly deal with so much and what it means to these women, to these transgendered women, and to our non-binary people who in this moment don't know what to do. But I am relieved. I'm relieved that in Illinois, these women and these allies and our governor and our leaders took a stand with the leadership of Representative Cassidy and the leadership of senators like Heather Steins. I'm relieved that here it is still legal, and that's why we fought so hard for this 3 pieces of legislation. We took Republican threats seriously, and we are proactive anticipating the draft decision that we are witnessing today. Because of our work, Illinois is a safe place for reproductive health care. But that will unfortunately not be the case throughout the country if this decision is finalized. Republicans are attempting to undo decades of progress on reproductive rights, and we just can't let them. Now more than ever, all of us must organize. We must organize from one corner of the country to the other corner of the country. And we must know that Illinois will continue to lead to protect us all. En esta mañana, mi voz con millones de personas a través de Estados Unidos, lamento lo oscuro de esta historia. La decisión de la Corte Suprema contenida en el borrador filtrador a los medios de prensa ayer es un ataque a los derechos reproductivos de todos nosotros, particularmente de las comunidades de color que allá han estado sufriendo tanto. Lamento con los jóvenes que quizás crecerán en un país donde las leyes no le protegen y no le dejan hacer lo que ellos tienen que hacer con su propio cuerpo. Me uno con las comunidades latinos, afroamericanas y a todos ellos que todavía en este momento no tienen acceso en Texas y en otras partes de este país y tienen miedo a qué va a pasar con ellos. Y me paro firme con ellos y con todos mis colegas aquí a decir que aquí en el estado de Illinois estamos contigo. Aquí en el estado de Illinois estamos peleando para asegurarnos que tú todavía tengas los derechos que necesitas y si tienes que ir a una clínica para un aborto, estamos contigo y las oficinas estarán abiertas para estar contigo. Ahora más que nunca nos organizamos y estamos juntos porque en la unidad viene la fuerza. Y solamente juntos podremos salir adelante y asegurarnos que más de nosotros estemos en posiciones de liderazgo para protegernos a todos. With that said, I'd like to introduce to you a leader, a true partner, a true ally with women, with transgendered women, with non-binary people in fighting like hell for our reproductive rights. And that is our speaker, Chris Welch.
Thank you, Leader Ramirez. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I say good morning because thank God we live in Illinois. Thank God we have a pro-choice governor. And thank God for these pro-choice champions on my left and my right. These are people that I'm proud to roll up my sleeves and go to work and go to fight for women's reproductive health rights each and every day we go to work in Springfield on behalf of the people. On January 22nd, 1973, our Supreme Court got it right. And let me tell you how impressive that decision was. 5 Republican justices and 2 Democrat-nominated justices in a 7-2 decision declaring a woman's right to make her own medical decisions deserves the highest level of constitutional protection. 5 Republican-nominated justices and 2 Democrat-nominated justices. The decision didn't fall on party lines. The decision wasn't even close because it was the right decision. Sadly, ever since January 22nd, 1973, this landmark decision has been under constant attack. Today, we're coming to terms with the fact that some of our worst fears are being realized. Yes, it's just a draft opinion that's been leaked, but we know the details are there. It's real. And we've warned you this conservative-packed Supreme Court could very likely overturn Roe versus Wade. We told you it was coming. We hoped this day would never come, but we warned you, and we are here. I've read the articles. I've read that draft decision many times since it came out last night. Justice Samuel Alito writes, Roe is egregiously wrong, and that it is time to heed the Constitution and return the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives. I'd like to let that sink in for a moment. This justice believes a person's deeply personal medical decisions belongs in the hands of politicians. Justice Alito, you are egregiously wrong. Just as Leader Ramirez said, it seems very appropriate this morning that it's dark outside, that it's raining hard. Mother Nature is crying. She's weeping because this is a dark day in history. But it's a perfect example of why we worked so hard in Illinois to ensure that reproductive health care is codified in law. On March 30th of this year, the final day of Women's History Month, we took further action in the House to ensure a person's right to choose would never be at risk in this state. And do you remember that day? Do you remember the Republicans in this state mocked those efforts? They called us out of touch and implied that this wasn't a serious matter that we should have been taking up that day. You remember that? How about it now? Where are the Republicans in the state of Illinois? They are eerily quiet today. Not a tweet, not a text, not a simple statement in support of women. Let me be clear. Illinois is not going back. We will always stand strong for reproductive health and a person's right to choose. because it is the right thing to do. States across this nation are banning abortion care before most people even know that they're pregnant. They're eliminating exemptions for rape or incest. Some are introducing legislation to ban abortion care even when the mother's life is at risk. In 2022, these will be very real laws in states across this country. In 2022. What's next? What's next? Well, read Justice Alito's draft opinion. Justice Alito writes, until the latter part of the 20th century, there was no support in American law for a constitutional right to obtain an abortion. Zero. You know what else wasn't supported in American law until the latter part of the 20th century? Marriage equality, the right to marry the person you love. We see the very clear assault on the LGBT community in many Republican-led states today. This draft opinion is not just a threat to pregnant women, it is an attack on fundamental rights to privacy. If the Supreme Court says your personal and private medical decisions should be in the hands of politicians, I hope we learn to vote like our lives depend on it. Because truly, we have the power to change this. Because this conservative-packed court has proven that we have to actually be the ones to lead this movement. It's a dark day today, but the sun will shine again. Because we will march. Because we will vote. We will vote at the ballot box. We will vote with our pocketbooks. And I'm saying if you live in one of these Republican-led states that's taken away a woman's right to choose, vote with your pocketbook. Make sure they hear us loud and clear. I am proud to introduce a real champion on this issue, a woman who I have proudly learned from and has stood right there with women every step of the way. Please welcome Senator Melinda Bush.
Good morning. I'd first like to thank the governor of the great state of Illinois for standing with women and understanding that in Illinois, we goddamn trust women to make their own decisions about their bodies. This is about bodily autonomy. No one other than the woman herself has a right to make those decisions. I'm sorry, I wish I had something prepared. But I'm going to speak from the heart. I was in high school in 1973 when women I knew had abortions. Some were hurt. Some traveled to other states where it was safe. Those that had the money to go went to New York. I cannot believe we are standing here today, since 1973, that women's bodily autonomy is under attack. No government has the right to tell a woman what to do with her body. I stood proudly with Representative Kelly Cassidy when we passed the Reproductive Health Act in the state of Illinois. And not one Republican voted with us to protect a woman's right to reproductive health. Not one. And believe me, I spoke with every one of them. Not one was willing to stand with women in the state of Illinois. And I'd like to thank those that came before me. Senator Feigenholz, Senator Heather Staines, who passed HB 40 to make sure there is no trigger law in the state of Illinois. If the Supreme Court should make this horrendous decision, there is no trigger that becomes a law in the state of Illinois. Thank you to those women and men who stood with us and fought with us. I'm just angry. I'm sure you all heard like I did last night with texts starting to come across, trying to pick up news that was going on, reading this unbelievable draft opinion. I'm going to tell you what, I've got a right to vote in this country. I should have a right to my own reproductive health. I don't bear children any longer, but I am here to my dying day to stand with this governor and these women and men who believe in our rights as human beings. Thank you to everyone that's here today. Thank you, Governor Pritzker. I don't know where we would be without you. And now it is my great honor to introduce to you the President of the Senate of the state of Illinois, Don Harmon, who stood with us, who made sure those bills were called and passed into law. I am so, so grateful to you, as are all of the citizens of the state of Illinois. President Don Harmon.
Morning. I will be brief, as is so obvious. The voices of the incredible women with whom we serve deserve to be heard today. As you just heard Senator Bush, you'll hear more at the podium. More speak by standing here with us, or their work over the last decades. And I'm also grateful that so many of our male allies are here too. The Supreme Court is poised to overturn Roe against Wade and deprive millions of women of the right to choose. It is upsetting, but not shocking. It's why we've taken so many steps in Illinois to protect this fundamental right. The Republican Party continues to disregard the will of the people. They tried to overturn an election, refused to seat a nominated Supreme Court justice, and they've passed laws throughout the country to make it harder to vote. This is the most extreme example yet of the Republicans ignoring the will of the people. As long as there's a Democratic majority in the Illinois State Senate, women will have their rights protected. We will stand as a bulwark against any effort to turn back the clock to darker days. It's my honor to introduce one of our longest-serving colleagues, a true progressive voice and one who would bring a hell of a lot of common sense to Washington, Senator Jacqueline Collins.
Good morning. I am so proud to stand here with my colleagues, the champions that have been on the forefront of this battle, along with the leadership of this state. Governor Pritzker, Lieutenant Governor Stratton, and all the other leadership, Speaker Welch, and again, President Harmon. Let me just say, let me be clear. This proclamation is vicious, deliberate, a deliberate attack on women, on poor women, on women of color, and on young women. The future we feared is here, and now is the time for clarity, intention, and action. The highest court in the land is saying to women, you have no power. The highest court in this land is saying to women, you have no value. The highest court in this land is wrong, and we here in Illinois will stand for equity. We here in Illinois will always protect the reproductive freedoms of Illinoisans. Today, that is not enough. In 2019, more than 7,000 non-residents came to our state to obtain legal, safe abortions. More than 2 women who sought refuge in 2014. We need more than just in-state protections. We must speak to the women of our nation, sitting at home right now, paralyzed by pure terror. Here and now, let us reassure them that the state of Illinois will remain a beacon of hope. Illinois will not fail them. When a woman comes to us, she will be safe, she will be welcomed, and she will have the freedom to make decisions about her own body without a court that has no compassion, no vision, no sense of true justice, smashing her right to choose. The nation, the world is watching us. What we do next will have ripple effects on the rights of women, people of color, and queer people. History is depending on us to balance the scale of justice for our fellow Americans. May we live up to Illinois' legacy of morality, freedom, liberty, and justice. Thank you, and I have the honor of now introducing my colleague, Senator Pasion Zayas.
Devastated, speechless, shocked, appalled, stunned, incensed, scared. Those are some of the words that passed through the minds as the chilling news broke last night about a draft opinion to overturn the precedent of self-determination for of women and people assigned female at birth. Reproductive rights and bodily autonomy are the most basic, fundamental human rights. This is not a drill. This is not a test, nor a dress rehearsal. We have seen this many times before with the assault on Black lives, on immigrant rights, on LGBTQ rights, on disability rights, on Native Americans, on Latinos. This moment is the rally cry and a defining time that draws a line in history. Should the leaked draft be the final opinion, we have a mandate. We have a mandate to demonstrate relentlessly at every corner of federal government and lock arms with our sisters and our siblings to deliver the codification of Roe versus Wade and to end the filibuster. It's up to us to do the organizing work and apply the pressure because our lives are literally on the line. We have the responsibility locally to coordinate life-saving mutual aid that includes abortion funds, transportation, and enacts radical hospitality for anyone living and traveling to Illinois who needs access to a safe abortion. Because when the Supreme Court has failed reproductive justice, Illinois has not and will not. Where the forces of reactionary, patriarchal, racist, classic backlash attempt to knock us back, Illinois will continue to push us forward. I make that commitment today, here with the power of the women in this room, those who raised us, those who we are raising, and those we have yet to know. This work is intergenerational, intersectional, and an imperative. The implications are especially great for women of color, people with limited economic resources, and transgender non-binary people. I'm grateful to be standing in solidarity with everyone in this room, including our governor right by our side, because now we are knowing in full knowledge that although the post-Roe world has not quite yet arrived, the assuredly successful fight against that world starts now, because no court, no man, and no force can hold back the freedom of our bodily autonomy and self-determination. They may attempt to delay, but they cannot hold us back. And one of the most powerful advocates of this work, I have the honor of introducing Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton.
Thank you so much, Senator Paciani-Zayas, for that introduction. I am Juliana Stratton, and I use she, her pronouns. I won't mince words. I'm angry that we must stand here today. I'm angry because the basic premise that women are people, people with hopes, with dreams, with rights, can still be treated as a matter of debate. I'm angry that the conversation that I had to have with my adult daughters last night was about how anyone could dare try to tell them what they can or cannot do with their own bodies, a constitutional right afforded to their mother but is threatened to not be so for their generation. Think about that. I'm angry because the very moment women were gained the right to an abortion, Republicans have fought tooth and nail to not only overturn Roe v. Wade, but to take away the very freedom of choice. And you have to ask yourself, to what end? What is the end goal that you would be so intently focused on controlling someone else's uterus? Clearly, they don't trust women. Because bodily autonomy is not just about the here and now, it's also about self-determination for our futures. I think of someone who's a first-generation college student, whether from an urban or a rural community, who is on the path to secure the educational and economic opportunities her family never had, whose life and prospects can be so swiftly derailed by an unwanted pregnancy. I think about the Black women who would literally die. Structural racism and misogyny have already claimed far too many lives in our community, with Black women's maternal mortality rate already 2 to 3 times higher than that of white women. In fact, one study projects that without access to safe legal abortions, that number will increase by over 30%. And I think about access to contraception. I think about marriage equality and trans rights and voting rights and all the other rights that are at stake and far more tenuous if Roe v. Wade is overturned. Let me make this clear. This is not about the sanctity of life. This is about dictating who gets to choose what their life looks like and what their quality of life should be. If Roe v. Wade is overturned, it will only be the beginning of a dark reality where states across this nation will try to see just how far back they can push the clock and how many rights they can strip away. I'm angry, but I am not surprised. Advocates and activists and women in particular have been sounding this alarm for years. Some said they were overreacting. Or as so often is the case, women were ignored or talked over, or shushed. But in Illinois, we listened. We listened to the voices of women. And that's why we fought to protect bodily autonomy, so that no matter what is facing the rest of the nation, it's guaranteed that Illinois is a safe place where your voices and your experiences matter. A place where we trust women, full stop. As of now, every person in America, cis, trans, or non-binary, still has the right to an abortion, but it pains me to say that we don't yet know if that will remain the case. But here's what I can say for certain. With all of these incredible allies and advocates standing with me, here in Illinois, we will not go back, not on our watch. Thank God for Governor Pritzker, and I will bring him back up at this time to answer questions.
Thank you.
Governor, to be blunt, what are you going to do about it? What more needs to be done here in Illinois by you and the legislature to protect rights for residents of Illinois? What more can you do to make these services accessible to residents of other states where those rights may be at risk? What are you going to do?
Well, let's start with this, that the federal government now, the Congress, will have the ability to take a vote on whether to further restrict women's rights. And there are people running for office on the ballot in 2022 who will stand up for women's rights, for reproductive rights, and there are others who would vote to take them away. So the first thing I think that all of us would say is, let's protect our rights as best we can at the federal level, keep them from doing away with them altogether. The second, of course, is it's not an assurance that Illinois will always be a pro-choice state. If the wrong people are elected to office, if people who are against women's rights get elected to office, if the legislature turns Republican or the governorship turns Republican, we will end up being an anti-choice state. It's almost hard to believe because we have made progress year after year after year in this state. HB 40, the Reproductive Health Act, making sure that we're keeping our young people safe with the ability when they are raped to get an abortion if they need that without the consent of their parent. We have work to do. We have to make sure that people get elected who stand up for women's rights and particularly for women's reproductive rights.
Governor, can I read you part of a statement from one of your opponents on the Republican side, State Senator Darren Bailey, and it is a longer statement, so I'll just give you a little bit of it. We live in a state where Democrats hold a supermajority in both chambers, but our laws are too extreme. As governor, my focus will be restoring parental notification, ending taxpayer-funded abortion, and prioritizing and ensuring viable options that save lives and support women and families before, during, and after pregnancy.
Darren Bailey wants to take away a woman's right to choose. Let's be clear. Darren Bailey is opposed to women's rights.
That's right.
That is what that statement says. You can couch it in whatever words you want. That is what he is saying. There is, and I'll turn it over to the representative. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Governor. We do have a lot of great stuff in place, but there are more things we can do. I mentioned Representative Hirschauer's bill that we passed right at the end of session that provides protections for healthcare professionals who perform both here and in other states to protect them from adverse action from states that have restrictions and penalties for providers. There are also ways that we can make our state more welcoming to folks who are coming here for sanctuary. So, in theory, like, hey, Alabama family, you're a teacher. We could make it easier for you to transfer your license and become an Illinoisan. We can provide protections for the various providers beyond just the healthcare providers. So there are things that we can do. We can ensure that there are resources available for patients who maybe used their last penny to get here from Texas. Can we make coverage available? Things like that. And it's why I threw down the challenge of creativity. We have to think about what these patients and families are coming here in need of and ensure that as a state, we are setting the table.
Governor, have you been in contact with other Midwest states, governors, and leadership about what can be done in other states that maybe don't have the legislation that Illinois has?
Not yet, but I have a call in actually this morning to another governor. I'll let you know if I connect and, if there are any discussions worth sharing. But suffice to say that there are a lot of, particularly Midwestern states, where their rights will be taken away because of this decision. We have protected women in Illinois by taking away the language that would revert Illinois to being an anti-choice state. That's not the case in some other states.
Governor, obviously, you're a person who has a lot of means. What can you do personally on a national level to address this issue? And do you plan to put more money behind organizations that are going to be pushing legislation in Congress or assisting women in other states who need reproductive health care? What are you going to do personally on this issue?
Well, this is part of what we can do. So we're speaking out. We're telling the rest of the nation that they need to get on it right now. that they need to repeal the laws that will revert their state to being anti-choice, that they need to elect people in 2022 who will stand up for women's rights. That's the most important thing we can do right now, is make sure that people get elected that are standing up for women.
Governor, prior to yesterday's draft coming out, crime was shaping up to be the big issue in the race for governor. How does this change the landscape, and how do you see this as impacting efforts to get out the vote, and what will be done? What do you anticipate is going to be done on both sides, I guess?
Look, crime is still an important issue to people all across Illinois and all across the nation.
Does this become the primary issue now?
Well, what I can tell you is that you are going to see marches. You are going to see activism like you haven't seen for quite some time. Think January 17th, January 20th of 2017. Think January 21st of 2017, the Women's March. That was an amazing sight. I think all of us who marched, all of us who care about women's rights, are going to be out there marching, speaking out, making sure that the Supreme Court, as well as the Congress, and voters all across this nation know how we feel.
Last question. Could I just have a clarification on the parental notification? There
Yes.
are polls that show 75%. I'm sure there are other polls that show something else, but there are those who are opposed to the parental notification changes that were made. Do you support taking away parental notification?
I did, and I signed the bill because this is about protecting, in particular, the most vulnerable young people. That's what it's about. It's not about your child or my child. It's about the children who live in homes where they are not safe. It's about children who are unprotected out there, who need refuge and cannot rely upon a parent to give them permission. And it is extraordinarily important that we remember that this day is about women's rights. This day is about reproductive rights in general. Every right that we have had for 50 years in this country, for the women who stand here and women all across this nation, all of it is at stake now. You heard about, it's not just that they're taking away reproductive rights, it's that this is a slope that they are headed down that is going to take away all of the rights that were granted as a result of the right to privacy. It's a constitutional right to privacy determined by the court 50 years ago and reinforced along the way. And now they're taking it away.
I believe there was a waiver for abuse, those who were abused. I think there is this disagreement with those. You need a parental notification if you're getting a tonsillectomy, but you don't have to.
You're missing the forest through the trees here. Think about this. Everything that virtually everybody in this room, and I'm older than most people in this room, but for 50 of my 57 years, this has been a constitutional right. I understand, but this is all part of a set of rights that are being taken away. That's what this is about. I've been marching for women's rights, for reproductive freedom, literally since my mother took me marching in the 70s for it. This is something I've taken for granted, that it was a right. There have been fights along the way to expand those rights, to protect women. But we have always expanded it. We have always made sure that those rights are protected. Now here we have a Supreme Court where a seat on the Supreme Court was stolen. And now they are taking away women's rights based upon an unelected majority that includes a seat that was stolen.
Governor, are you committed to investing more money from your political capital to support Democrats across the state, and maybe in tight races, whether it's at the state level or congressional level? Are we going to see an influx of money from you to influence races?
I've been doing it my whole adult life. I'm not going to stop now. Of course. And I mean, I want to do everything that I can do. It is my voice, though, that I think that makes the biggest difference. That is what is important,
thanks,
and it
everyone.
is standing together with all of these folks. So thank you.
So thank you for your words and speaking from the heart.